Have you ever taken the antiparasitic pill your doctor prescribed, finished the full course, and 2 weeks later felt exactly the same? Maybe even worse? If that happened to you, I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes. Because what INAPOs I'm going to share with you today is the reason that pill didn't APO's tea work and what actually does. INAPOs, I'm Dr. Michael Lee, and in over 30 years working with patients in integrative and natural medicine, INAPOs, we've seen the same story repeat itself thousands of times. So someone comes in exhausted, bloated, unable to sleep properly, with digestive issues their gastroenterologist could APOs. T explain. They were prescribed a standard antiparasitic. They took it. And the problem came back, or never really went away in the first place. Today, in APOs, I'm going to show you 3 natural compounds that address what those pharmaceutical medications miss entirely. And at the end of this video, INAPOs, I'm going to reveal the single common mistake people make when trying to clear parasites naturally. A mistake that guarantees the problem returns within weeks, even if the treatment was working. So, make sure I want to stay until the end. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Leave me a comment right now telling me where you may pause or watching from. I have viewers from the United States, Australia, the United Kingdom, Canada. I read every single comment, and knowing where you are helps me understand what resources are available to you when I give you these protocols. Prior city and country below, INAPOs I'll be reading. Now let NAPOs, let's talk about why the conventional approach to parasites fails so consistently. Because understanding this is what makes everything else INAPOs I'm going to share today makes sense. When a conventional doctor prescribes an antiparasitic medication, something like mebendazole or albendazole, that medication is designed to target specific types of parasites by disrupting their ability to absorb glucose. IT and APOs as a relatively narrow mechanism of action. The problem is that the intestinal environment hosts not just one type of parasite, but dozens of potential species, each with a different biological structure, different life cycle, and different vulnerability window of their out. A medication calibrated for one mechanism will neutralize certain organisms while leaving others completely untouched. And here NAPOs. As what makes it even more complicated. Many parasites have a larval stage, a cyst stage, and an adult stage, and most pharmaceutical antiparasitics are only effective during one of those stages. If the treatment window does in APOs T coincide with the right phase, the medication passes through the system without doing what it was supposed to do. What the 3 natural compounds, INAPOs, I'm going to share with you today, do differently is work across mechanisms simultaneously. They don't in APOs, T rely on a single point of attack. They create an intestinal environment that parasites of many types find hostile. Not just parasitic, just one species during one stage of its life cycle. And they do this using compounds that have been used in traditional medicine across multiple cultures for hundreds of years, with a growing body of modern research beginning to confirm what those traditions already knew. Let's pause. Let's start with the first one. The first compound is wormwood, known scientifically as Artemisia absinthium. If that name sounds familiar, IT and APOs, S, because the active compound in wormwood, artemisinin, is also the basis for one of the most effective anti-malarial drugs ever developed. That drug, artemisinin, was derived directly from this plant. And the scientist who isolated it, Dr. Tu Yu, received the Nobel Prize in medicine for that work in 2015. So when I tell you that wormwood has real pharmacological activity, INAPOs M, not talking about folklore. INAPOs, I'm talking about a plant with a Nobel Prize behind it. What wormwood does in the context of parasite elimination is disrupt the integrity of the parasite enclosed as cell membrane. Parasites, like all organisms, depend on the stability of their membrane to regulate what enters and leaves their cells. The sesquiterpene lactones in wormwood, the active bitter take in the compounds, you can taste immediately when you take it, create oxidative stress specifically within parasite cell structures. They and APOs, selectively toxic organisms in a way that does not damage human intestinal cells at therapeutic doses. This selectivity is exactly what makes wormwood valuable where broad spectrum pharmaceutical antiparasitics fall short. For practical use, wormwood is most commonly available as a dried herb, a tincture, or in capsule form. If you NPOs are using a standardized capsule, a typical therapeutic dose is between 200 and 300 milligrams, taken twice daily with food, once in the morning and once in the evening. If you APOs are using a tincture, which I often find more bioavailable for older adults whose digestive absorption can be slower, the standard starting dose is 1 milliliter diluted in water or juice, also twice daily. I want to be clear about the duration. Wormwood should not be used continuously for more than 3 weeks at a time. This is not a supplement infinitely. You use it for 2 to 3 weeks, then stop for at least 1 week before continuing if necessary. Long-term continuous use of wormwood at high dose has been associated with neurological effects at therapeutic doses. For short cycles, this is not a concern, but the cycling protocol is important, and INAPOS L-lining to this when I talk about the most common mistake people make. One more thing about wormwood that I want you to understand before we move to the second compound. It works discontinue best when IT and APOs as paired. Used alone, it addresses the membrane vulnerability of adult parasites effectively. But parasite eggs and larval stages have different biological protections. This is why the protocol INAPOs I'm going to give you at the end involves all 3 compounds together, not separately. Keep that in mind as we continue. Before I move to the second compound, I want to ask you something in the comments. Have you ever been told by a doctor that your symptoms, fatigue, bloating, brain fog, irregular digestion were just stress or just aging? Right quad, yes and quad, below if that APOs happened to you. Because what I see in the research and what INAPOs we've seen in my own patients is that those vague persistent symptoms are frequently the first and only sign that something biological is happening in the gut that is an APOs. T being identified. Your answer in the comments helps me under. Black walnut hull addresses both simultaneously. For dosing, the most reliable form is a standardized tincture. Look for one that specifies green hull extract, not the mature nut. A starting dose of 1 to 2 milliliters in water, taken once daily in the morning on an empty stomach, allows the juglone to reach the intestine before food dilutes its concentration. If you experience significant digestive discomfort in the first few days, reduce to half a milliliter and increase gradually over 5 to 7 days. Some degree of digestive activity in the first week is normal and expected. It indicates the compound is doing something. Severe cramping or diarrhea that persists beyond 3 days is a sign to reduce the dose further and consult a practitioner. Black walnut hull is also available in capsule form, typically standardized to contain juglone at specific concentrations. If you NPOs are using capsules, follow the manufacturer NPOs as dosing instructions. But the general therapeutic range is 2 to 3 capsules daily. As with wormwood, this is not a permanent supplement. IT and APOs used in the same cycling protocol INAPOs. I'll describe at the end. Now, here NAPOs. That's what I want you to prepare for. Because the third component, and I want to hear your component of this protocol, is the one that most people either done in APOs, T know about, or done in APOs, T use correctly. And IT and APOs as the one that addresses what both wormwood and black walnut hull cannot fully reach on their own. INAPOS, I'll share it in just a moment. Let me ask you something else before we get there. At this point in the video, you NPOs, we heard about wormwood NPOs as effect on adult parasite membranes and black walnut NPOs as effect on the intestinal environment. Write in the comments which one surprised you more and why. These conversations are genuinely useful life thinking. The third component is a combination. Clove, specifically Syzygium aromaticum, paired with raw pumpkin seeds. These two work together to address the stage of the parasite identified in the cycle that neither wormwood nor black walnut hull targets effectively, the egg stage. Clove contains eugenol, one of the most potent natural antiparasitic compounds. It penetrates the outer research. What makes eugenol pharmacologically unusual is that twice daily casing of parasite eggs, a used clove is a protective layer called the chorion and disrupts the development of the embryo inside. This is the mechanism that standard pharmaceutical antiparasitics almost entirely miss, because most synthetic antiparasitics cannot penetrate the chorion effectively. This is why people finish a pharmaceutical course, feel better for a few weeks, and then find their symptoms return. The adult parasites were cleared. The eggs were not. New adults hatched from those surviving eggs, and the cycle began again. Clove breaks that cycle at its source. For therapeutic use, clove can be taken as a powder, approximately half a teaspoon of ground clove in warm water or mixed into food. You can also essential oil in food grade form, 1 to 2 drops in a small amount of olive oil or coconut oil, but I prefer the powder form for most patients because the dosing is more consistent and the eugenol content in standardized ground clove is reliable. Clove is strong. Take it with food to minimize digestive irritation. Now, the pumpkin seed component works through a completely different mechanism, and this is why the combination is important. Raw, unroasted pumpkin seeds contain cucurbitine, an amino acid that causes temporary paralysis of the neuromuscular system of intestinal worms. It duns and APOs kill them directly, it paralyzes them. What this paralysis does is release their grip on the intestinal wall. Parasites attach to the intestinal lining to resist peristalsis, the natural movement of the gut that would otherwise carry them out of the body. Cucurbitine temporarily disables that attachment mechanism, and the natural movement of the intestine then clears them. Combined with clove and APOs as effect on the egg stage, you have a protocol that addresses adult parasites through paralysis and expulsion, while simultaneously preventing the next generation from hatching. For pumpkin seeds, the dose is simple: 1/4 cup of raw, unsalted, unroasted pumpkin seeds, eaten on an empty stomach first thing in the morning for 7 consecutive days. Do not use roasted seeds. The heat destroys the cucurbitine. Raw only. Some patients blend them into a smoothie. Others eat them directly. Either works as long as they APOs, raw and unsalted. Now, I promised you at the beginning of this video that I would reveal the single most common mistake people make when they try this kind of natural parasite protocol. The mistake that guarantees it 1 and APO work even if they NPOs. We're using exactly the right compounds. And here it is. The mistake is treating it like a course of antibiotics. People start the protocol, take it for 3 days, feel some discomfort, decide IT and APOs as not working, or decide they feel better and stop. Or they take it for 2 weeks, feel significant improvement, and stop. Just like they would stop a prescription when the symptoms clear. This is the error that brings parasites back every single time. Parasites have a life cycle. The time from egg to adult parasite in the most common intestinal species is between 2 and 4 weeks depending on the organism. If you stop a natural protocol before that full cycle completes, you have cleared the adults that were present when you start, but a new generation has already begun developing from the eggs that were laid during your first days of treatment. Those new adults will mature and the symptoms will return within 3 to 6 weeks of stopping.